It's undoubtedly one of the big stories for the weekend. The ANC's NEC, the party's highest decision-making body, is in its final stretch of holding a 3-day meeting discussing the state of the country and the organization itself. The meeting takes place amid deep divisions and calls for Secretary-General S. Magashule to step aside. For analysis on the state of play as it stands, let's begin political analyst Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who joins us now via our video line. Dr. Breakfast, always great getting your insights on these issues. No surprises, morning papers on a Sunday speaking about the ANC-NEC meeting, beg your pardon, being a ground of political mudslinging over various issues, including the RITS forces, supposedly, and S. Magashule himself. Again, that was largely expected. The question, though, is do you expect any ground-moving outcomes, given this is a meeting that's taking place with the president expected to appear before the State Capture Commission next month?
Well, I think because the Ramaphosa faction has an upper hand in the NEC of the ANC, I think the majority of the people are going to vote in favor of the recommendation of the Integrity Commission, which is to let go of the SG. However, if they make that call, there will be a backlash in some quarters, in particular from the RIT forces. I mean, you know as well as I do that there have been people who have been calling for the NEC to be dissolved because they are accusing them of being captured, accusing them of giving wrong orders, for instance, to vote with the opposition of late. So I think this is going to feed into the factional battles within the ANC, which is already divided. And I think the evidence is glaring. I mean, the mere fact that there were 4 legal opinions signifies that the ANC is very much divided on this matter. Otherwise, there would have been only one legal opinion. So I think the political cleavages are going to escalate, and this might have a negative spillover effect to government.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I wonder whether the optics work in favor or against the president as he, I guess, prepares to appear before the Zondo Commission. What's your reading of how this would place him as he takes the stand?
Well, I mean, the fight has started already. We heard the testimony of Brian Molefe, you know, spilling the beans, leading a political assault there. So I think he was setting the scene to cast aspersions on the integrity of the head of state and the head of government. That this is not a man of integrity. I think essentially that was the meaning of what he was trying to say. So I think there will be other, you know, attacks that will come from that. And also we heard about the application from Africa Forum that they also want to do a cross examination on the president.
Yeah. The S. Magashule matter has been touted, for better or for worse, as being the focal point of this particular NEC meeting. But there are other issues as well. You've touched in part on Busisiwe Mkhwebane and the voices that were emerging within the ANC pulling in different directions in the lead-up to that vote in Parliament. I wonder whether, you know, those kind of issues, even in the media, are receiving as much attention as they should, because they too play into what emerges of the ANC and by extension what takes place in government.
No, of course, certainly. You see, the challenge is that both factions, they never accepted fully the electoral outcomes of the Nazareth conference. That's why they've been attacking each other every now and then. That's why, for instance, the SG of the ANC said that the forces of RIT must give Ramaphosa and his team only 5 years. in the same way, we had Bekitele at some point saying that who told the SG that he's going to complete his term of office. So both of them have been at war. And whether you like it or not, this does affect the country. It does affect how government is trying to get the job done in terms of rendering various services to inhabitants.
Yeah, a whole lot more talk about the RET now, arguably, than there has been in a long time. As a force, how seriously do you think we should be taking it, especially because it is, according to some people, call it a faction that is led by people whose credibility has been called into question for quite some time. In fact, the City Press this morning reporting explicitly about how Carl Niehaus has been facing calls within the NEC himself to step down because of how prominent a face he's been in support of this RET faction, so to speak.
Yeah, I think both factions are tainted, you know.
Yeah.
They don't have men and women who are basically upholding good principles of transparency, of pursuing an agenda that will advance the interest of the country.
Yeah.
But in my view, the RET ideology is a form of populism, is a form of tool for mobilization. The RET program was born out of an attack that former President Zuma was getting from the mainstream media. So I see it as part of a counter-propaganda strategy in order to divert our attention from the allegations on corruption and to focus on the relationship between the powerful and the powerless, or the unevenness of the structure of the economy in terms of the relationship between blacks and whites.
Plenty of moving parts. This is also taking place in the backdrop of a supposed cabinet reshuffle. We don't know how true that is. Let's say it is. How best can the president, Ramaphosa, play his cards as president of the ANC and of the country?
Yeah, you know, more often than not, when we're having this discussion, we normally omit something. And it's not a mere omission. It's a significant omission, which is the fact that in as much as the president does have the prerogative powers to reshuffle his cabinet, but those powers are meant to be used in pursuit of national interest. They are meant in pursuit of the promotion of the development of the country. So when the idea crosses his mind, whether he should reshuffle his team or not, the first thing that must come to his mind is how does this advance the national interest? If there are other reasons besides the one that I've pointed out, then the rationale behind the reshuffling is wrong. But I think the current cabinet, it was instituted in order to strike a balance in terms of the two political blocs within the ANC, the RET faction, and also the CR17 camp. There are ministers who are part of the executive who should never have been appointed in the first place. Yeah. For instance, I don't think that the Minister of Basic Education has a history of getting the job done, nor do I think that, for instance, the Minister of Higher Education also has a track record of getting the job done. The same goes to, you know, the Minister of Women, Youth, and so on, the Minister of Employment and Labor. The list is endless. So some ministers were put there for purposes of political expediency, despite the fact that they fell short, even in the Zuma administration.
Yeah, and this is nothing new, right? Like the critique has been around for quite some time. What I find quite interesting is that the president has used one of his weekly newsletters that usually comes out on a Monday morning to speak out against, I didn't say this explicitly, but, the notion of cadre deployment and having people being held accountable for their track record. If we are to take the president seriously, or if he wants to be seen as a person who is serious, I mean, what are the things that are non-negotiable in this new cabinet if it does come our way?
Look, it's all talk and no action.
Yeah.
Ministers play an important role in terms of setting the tone for development. Yes, they are not bureaucrats, they are not administrators, but they are political heads. They give a strategic direction. So you need people who are going to basically go out of their way in terms of getting the job done. But if you have ministers who are falling short of promoting development for the majority, then you cannot expect to have departments which are stable and which are getting the ground, running, so to speak.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, as the cliche goes, we'll have to wait and see how that all folds out. Always great having your insights on the show as we continue placing these developments in perspective. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast is a political analyst. Thanks very much indeed.